You know, sometimes the smallest things in life set off the biggest changes. It can start with something as simple as a broken fence. That might not sound like much, but I promise you, by the end of this story, you'll see how a single crack in wood turned into a journey of patience, persistence, and a fight for what's right. So, stay with me, because the moment that fence went down, my whole life shifted, and I didn't even know it yet. It all started on a late spring morning. The air was still cool, the kind that carries a faint mist from the lake, and I was sipping my coffee on the porch. That lake had been my family's quiet retreat for generations. It wasn't big or flashy, just a calm, glassy stretch of water tucked away from town, surrounded by tall pines and oaks that made you feel like the world stopped moving the moment you stepped onto its shore. My father used to tell me, "A lake like this isn't just land. It's a memory keeper." He meant it too. Every corner of that place held a piece of our history, fishing trips where we caught more laughs than bass, summer nights when we lit bonfires so bright the stars felt jealous, even the quiet winters where the snow blanketed the whole shore, turning it into something out of a painting. That lake wasn't just property, it was home. But one thing about property, people always want a piece of it. And sometimes they don't ask. I had built a fence years back, nothing fancy, just sturdy wood posts with wire stretched between them. It wasn't meant to be a fortress, only a polite but firm reminder, this side is private. Folks from the other side of the road had their own access points. The lake wasn't closed off. But for some reason, my strip of land, the one with the smoothest slope down into the water, always drew attention. That morning, as I sipped my coffee and watched the mist lift, I heard something odd. A sharp snap, followed by the groan of wood under pressure. At first, I thought it was a deer pushing through, maybe trying to squeeze past the wire. But then came voices, loud, frustrated, and most certainly human. I set my mug down and walked over, heart thumping with that uneasy rhythm that comes when you know you're about to see something you won't like. Sure enough, there she was. A woman I'd seen around town, sharp, hurried, always carrying herself like the world owed her a shortcut. Her name was Carla. I didn't know her well, only in passing, but she had a reputation for getting what she wanted, one way or another, and at that moment, what she wanted was a direct path to the lake. She had a hammer in her hand, and a determined scowl on her face. Two of the fence posts were already leaning, and a section of the wire lay crumpled on the ground. She turned when she heard my boots crunching on the gravel, and instead of guilt, instead of embarrassment, she gave me this exasperated look, like I was the one causing her trouble. "Oh," she said, brushing dust off her jeans. "You're here?" "Of course I'm here," I said slowly, trying to keep my voice calm. "This is my property. What exactly are you doing?" She sighed, as though explaining something obvious to a stubborn child. "I need lake access. Your fence is in the way. It's not fair for you to block it off." I stared at her, the gall of it hitting me like a slap. "This is private land, Carla. That fence is there for a reason. If you want access, there are plenty of public spots around the lake." She shook her head, tight-lipped. "Those aren't convenient. This is right across from my house. Why should I walk half a mile when the lake's right here?" That was her word. As if convenience trumped years of family history, property rights, or the simple fact that the land wasn't hers. I felt the heat rising in my chest, but I forced myself to keep steady. "You don't get to decide that, Carla. This isn't about convenience. This is about respect. You can't just break something that doesn't belong to you." She crossed her arms, defiant. "We'll see about that." And with that, she picked up her hammer, tossed it in the back of her car, and drove off like nothing happened, leaving my fence half destroyed, the morning peace shattered, and my hands trembling not with fear, but with anger. I stood there for a long while, staring at the gap in that fence. Part of me wanted to fix it right away, hammer in new posts, and be done with it. But another part of me knew this wasn't just about replacing wood. This was the beginning of something bigger. Because when someone like Carla sets her eyes on something, they don't just stop at a broken fence. That night, I called my brother. He's the calm one, always the mediator, and I needed to hear his voice. I told him what happened, every word, every look she gave me. There was a long silence on the line before he finally said, "Don't let her push you around. Dad always said this land was worth fighting for." And I realized he was right. Over the next few weeks, things escalated. Carla started using the gap in the fence as if it were her private walkway. She brought her kids down, set up chairs, even left trash scattered along the shore. Each time, I'd confront her, and each time, she'd brush me off. I was being unreasonable. "You don't even use the lake that much," she snapped once, as if that excused everything. I tried reasoning. I tried patience. But when someone refuses to respect boundaries, literally and figuratively, there comes a point where patience feels like surrender. That was when I made the decision that would change everything. I wasn't just going to repair the fence. I was going to take back control of the entire shoreline. Now, at that moment, I had no idea what that would entail, no idea how messy it would get, or how many sleepless nights it would cost me. But I knew one thing for certain: if she thought breaking my fence was the end of the story, she was wrong. It was only the beginning. And so, with nothing more than determination in my chest, and my father's words echoing in my ears, I set out on a path that would lead me not only to defend my land, but to end up owning more of it than I ever dreamed possible. But first, I had to rebuild what had been broken. Not just a fence, but a boundary, a line in the sand, a declaration that some things are worth protecting. Because fences aren't just wood and wire. They're symbols. And when someone breaks them, they're not just testing the strength of the posts. They're testing the strength of the person who built them, and I was about to show her just how strong I could be. If chapter 1 of this story was about shock, the fence falling, the violation, the anger, then chapter 2 is about the fight. Not the kind of fight with fists or shouting matches, but the kind that takes patience, paperwork, persistence, and above all, heart. Because sometimes the biggest victories don't come from a single battle, they come from refusing to give up, no matter how long the road feels. After that first confrontation with Carla, I realized she wasn't going to stop. Each week she got bolder. Her kids left soda cans and chip bags by the water. She invited friends over, as if my family's shoreline was suddenly her picnic ground. And every time I tried to talk sense into her, she laughed me off with that smug, dismissive tone. "It's just water. You don't own the lake." But here's the thing: while no one can own the water itself, you can absolutely own the land that touches it. My family had owned that strip for decades, with deeds and surveys to prove it. That fence was never about keeping people from enjoying nature. It was about protecting what was ours from those who didn't respect it. So, I started digging deeper. Not just into repairing the fence, but into understanding the boundaries of the land. I pulled out old files from my dad's cabinet. Yellowed papers with surveyor stamps and maps showing exactly where our property line stretched. And that's when I saw something that made me pause. The shoreline around my property had several adjoining parcels, some of which were unused, neglected, or owned by folks who'd long since moved away. A thought sparked in me. What if I didn't just defend the little slice I already had? What if I made sure no one like Carla could ever pull this stunt again? What if I secured the whole shoreline? It felt impossible at first. Owning more land meant money. Money I didn't have lying around. But the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. If I could expand my ownership, Carla wouldn't just be breaking a fence anymore. She'd be trespassing on something far bigger, and with no wiggle room to argue: convenience. So, I started making calls. The first was to the county records office. I wanted to know exactly who owned the neighboring strips of shore. Some were listed under families who hadn't been seen in years, some under estates stuck in probate, and one belonged to an older man named George who lived 3 towns over. I called George first. He was surprised to hear from me but kind. He admitted he hadn't visited his parcel in decades. Honestly, he said with a tired laugh, I'd be happy to get rid of the taxes I pay on that useless land. Within 2 weeks, I was drafting papers to buy it from him for far less than I expected. That was the first victory, and it lit a fire in me. Next came the estate parcels. That was harder. Lawyers, heirs scattered across states, red tape thicker than the pines along the shore. But I stuck with it, week after week, phone call after phone call. Some hung up, some argued, some simply didn't care. But eventually, one by one, pieces started to fall into place. Meanwhile, Carla kept pushing her luck. She saw surveyors out there and mocked me, saying I was wasting money. She brought her friends to sit by the broken fence like it was some sort of protest. Each time, I reminded myself, keep calm, keep focused. Let the paperwork do the talking. Months passed. Seasons turned. I worked extra shifts, cut corners on my budget, and poured every spare dime into the dream of owning that shore. There were nights I lay awake, wondering if it was worth it, if I was chasing something too big for me to hold. But then I'd picture my father standing by the lake, his hand on my shoulder, telling me again, this land is worth fighting for. Finally, after nearly a year of persistence, the last signature fell into place. Every neighboring parcel, every sliver of shore, was mine. The papers were stamped, filed, and delivered. And just like that, the fight was over. Not with a dramatic showdown, not with shouting, but with quiet triumph. The next morning, I walked down to the water. The air was cool, the lake as still as glass, just like the morning this all began. But this time the silence felt different. It wasn't tense, it wasn't fragile, it was secure. I stood there, letting the weight of it sink in. I owned the entire shoreline now. What began as anger over a broken fence had turned into something far greater than I'd imagined. When Carla showed up again, oh, she did. She came storming down the path, demanding to know what all the survey stakes meant. I met her at the water's edge, papers in hand, and explained it plainly. This is my land. All of it, from that pine grove down to the inlet. You don't have the right to step foot here anymore. For once, she didn't have a smug comeback. Her mouth opened, then closed, then opened again, but no words came. She turned red, muttered something under her breath, and stormed away. And I knew in that moment, it was finished. But here's the real lesson. It was never just about beating her. It wasn't about proving a point to Carla, or building the tallest fence. It was about standing up for something that mattered. Too often in life, we let little things slide, because we don't want the hassle. Because we think it's easier to keep the peace. But sometimes, those little things are the start of something bigger. And if you don't draw the line, someone else will keep pushing until you've lost more than you realized. That fence wasn't just wood. It was a test. And by refusing to back down, I didn't just protect my piece of land. I built a legacy, one my father would have been proud of. Now when I sit on that porch with my coffee and watch the sun rise over the lake, I don't just see water and trees. I see perseverance. I see proof that no matter how impossible something feels, if you fight for it with patience and heart, you can turn broken boards into something unshakable. And maybe that's the message I want to leave you with. Fences will fall in your life. People will test your boundaries, try to take what isn't theirs, or make you feel like you don't deserve to hold on to what you love. But if you dig deep, if you remember why it matters, you can come out stronger. Not just fixing what was broken, but building something even greater. Because sometimes, when someone breaks your fence, they end up handing you the keys to the whole shore.